The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome back, Season 12, Episode 2 of the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we're continuing on our saga this season really is about pretty much anything. But we started off last week, Sandy. You were telling us about some situations that were taking place in your studio involving a Scooby-Doo figurine and a couple of other things, a little hanging ornament and stuff like that. Yeah. But if folks didn't have a chance to listen to the last podcast, number one, why? It was only 30 minutes long. And number two, can you give us like a 1 minute synopsis of what was going on that is now making us do this episode?
Yes. All right. So last 2 years, ever since my very, very close friend Trey passed away unexpectedly in a car accident, I've been having activity on and off, so I know he's visiting me. But after an investigation last weekend and the eclipse last Monday, or a couple weekends ago, everything, all hell broke loose in the studio. And for 3 days straight, the Scooby-Doo was literally getting launched off the gun cabinet, and the ornament fell down. Like, really wild things were going on, which convinced me without a shadow of a doubt that there's something paranormal going on in here, or at least was. And we think that it may have been ramped up between my investigation and opening myself up so much for the investigation, and also the eclipse. It was sort of a perfect storm.
Perfect. So what we've got going on today is we're going to do, last season we did a spirit box from two separate locations, Sandy and her domicile, myself and my domicile, and we kind of focused on what was going on in my home, trying to reach my parents or people who wanted to reach out to me. This time we're going to do the same thing. However, we're going to focus on the energy in Sandy's studio. And the interesting thing here too is that I'm also recording the video. So if something in the shot that the camera has, which is the gun cabinet, and a couple of other things on the wall, a chair, a bunch of other stuff. If anything happens during this, we should be able to see it.
Yes.
And we should have video backup of it happening.
Right, which would be so cool. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed because, of course, now it's been quite a while with nothing going on.
Right.
So I'm really hoping that if something could happen, it does, because I think this would be really cool for everybody to get to experience it in real time, in live, in our real time. Can I tell you that just scared the living hell out of me? It sounded like a demon was talking to me.
Oh, good Lord. All right. So what I've got going on here is we've got the spirit box going, and I need to make a couple of changes on my microphone. Okay, that's better. All right, so I've got it going on. I've turned off everything on my end that could affect the microphone.
So have I.
And so now we can start.
Okay, so I just want to make a note that only good positive energy and positive spirits are allowed to come through to us today. There is no negativity allowed, not only in this particular space, but in Todd's space, in my home, in Todd's home. No negativity allowed. We just ask that good spirits come forward to communicate with us today.
That was
Todd,
interesting.
Can you bring that up a little bit?
Sure. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Is there anyone here with us today? Can you tell us your name? That's weird. Can you tell us who you are?
That kind of sounded like somebody said wannabe, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, or one of you. I don't know.
Gotcha.
I thought same thing. Same kind of thing. Is Trey here? How many of you are here?
If there's any energies that have been hanging out in Sandy's studio, can you come forward now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What's your name then?
William?
William? Is your name William? Is this William we're speaking with?
That may have said maybe.
Yeah. William, is there something we can help you with? Oh.
Not sure what that was. But it was 4 syllables. And a woman, I believe.
Yeah, that sounded female. Grandma, are you here? Like, yeah, maybe? Yeah? Grandma, are you visiting me? There's a lot of female coming.
A lot.
Is this my grandmother?
What's your grandma? Marilyn.
Marilyn? Can you come in closer to talk? Yeah? Grandpa, are you here? Larry? Lawrence? Do you come to visit me?
If this isn't Sandy's grandparents, can you tell us who you are? Are you the one that's been moving things in the room?
Do you need help? Can I help you in some way? Can you say my name?
I don't know that said Sandy, but it said something similar to it.
It did. Trey, are you here with me? No? Who is knocking the items down off of my cabinet?
That sounded like an answer, but I'm not sure what it said.
I know. We'll review it afterwards.
Do you know somebody named Andy or Andrea or anything like that?
I knew an Andrea. She passed several years ago. Andrea? Are you here? And her son's name is Billy. He's alive. How many of you are here right now? Can you give me a number?
I thought I heard 40.
Are there 40 spirits here with me right now? A lot of female. Why do you come to stay with me and visit me? Do you feel safe here?
Stop.
Stop. Do my crystals make you feel... Do they draw you here? Kind of?
That's what I thought too.
Does the energy from the crystals draw you here?
Hard to tell on that one.
I thought maybe in a way, but I'm not sure. Can you make that Scooby-Doo fall off the cabinet again right now for me? To let me know that you're here for sure? Or move something on the cabinet? It's like whole sentences coming through.
Yep.
Can you try to do that for me, please? Is that your way of getting my attention? Did the eclipse energy help you manifest?
Were you drawn there because Sandy was at an investigation last weekend?
Is there a woman? Is there a female energy spirit here with me? I can help you, but you have to tell me what you need. Don't know? Are you confused? Can you tell me when you passed away? Can you say my name? Do you come and go?
That sounded like maybe yes, but I will also
thought so,
say
too.
that it sounds to me like less is being said.
I know. Grandma, if that's you, can you let me know that's you? What's your middle name? What's your middle name, Grandma? What's the name that we share? Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
Excuse me. It's gotten awful quiet.
Yeah, it's very, very quiet now. If you need help, let me know now before we end the session.
There was something there.
Like no?
Either no, now, or help.
Do you need help? Please tell me, do you need help? All right. Thank you to all of the good spirits, good energies that have come forth today. And once again, no negative energies are allowed to stay in my home, my space, Todd's home, Todd's space. But thank you to all the positive energies that have come through.
Would you say goodbye to us?
Huh. Some interesting stuff.
I feel like we started off with some good response
Yeah.
that we'll need to listen back to.
Mm-hmm.
There was, from what I could tell, there was a guy, there was a man.
Yeah.
But there was also a female who, and you mentioned this too, said things that were more than just one or two syllables. Like I counted 4 or 5 at some points.
Again, the only, for me, the main candidates that I would have known who would come here would be my grandparents, Trey, and that's pretty much it. You know, my dog Jack, although I don't think he'd come through in words. I don't know. He might have a bark. But those are the only main candidates that I can think of that would come visit me. Although there are ancestor spirits and spirits who may come through as well. That's why you kind of have to have an open mind when you do this, especially with personal investigating.
Right.
I did think it was interesting that it sounded like we had a William come through and then an Andrea. And Andrea, who's a friend of mine, passed away probably, I think it was 8-9 years now. But her son's name is William.
That is kind of interesting.
I know. So that's kind of weird.
He's
alive.
Are you certain of that? Like,
What?
when's the last time you either spoke to him or know that he's been around?
We're in regular contact because we work through a rescue together. So
Gotcha.
I hear from him a lot.
What about her husband's name?
Oh, I can't remember her husband's name, but he's passed on too. So I have to look into that because I want to kind of look into that a little bit. I do think that's a little bit interesting. Not saying for sure that would be it, but it is kind of a weird kind of connection.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe she came through. She was a wonderful, amazing woman. So who knows? Who knows who's visiting? You know, it could be anybody. And again, I kind of started to go down the confused path because a lot of times they'll come confused because they're drawn to somebody and they just need help. They need to not be confused.
Right. And it did seem like maybe you got a response of help or now or something like that. So listen back to it. You might have Trey coming to you as well, but somebody might be reaching out to you for help.
I know. And again, not every spirit, you know, it was interesting. I think I sent this to you and we have a couple minutes. Maybe we can just mention this briefly, but I sent this to you. I am a huge Michelle Belanger follower, fan. I believe in her immensely. She is one of the most amazing psychic medium empaths I have ever come across. And I take a lot of what she says seriously because honestly, in my experiences, it jives. It makes sense. And so I take some of her classes, and somebody in a class not that long ago said that, asked the question of her, well, what happens when you have dementia or Alzheimer's and you pass away? Are you suddenly, enlightened, so to speak, once you pass away? And her answer was really interesting. It depends. She basically said that, to summarize, that the longer that you lived with these afflictions, I'm not sure if they're considered diseases, but the longer you lived with them, the longer it takes you to shake that once you've passed on. And that sometimes you can stay confused for quite a while. She said sometimes if it hasn't happened that long and you pass fairly early in the process, it's almost instantaneous. You can, but again, sometimes though it takes quite a while before that separates itself from your existence, which I found extremely fascinating and interesting. And of course, she says everything like it literally is the way it is. Like she knows. And so I thought that was very interesting. So with us talking about confusion, I sometimes wonder how confused you might be. Think of it as after an accident. Right. Are you immediately enlightened? They say, you don't know that you're dead sometimes if it happens really quickly, and there's a confusion, and there's so many different hypotheses of what happens after you pass away. Do you immediately go to your life review? Do you do this? Do you do that? What happens?
Well, I mean, think about this. Even in real life, when you've been in an accident, and let's say it's pretty horrific. I mean, you don't come out of that and go, man, I remember every instant, right? I mean, there's points of confusion in our lives all the time. And how long, and depending on the situation that we're in, sometimes the confusion clears up immediately. Like you wake up and you go, okay, I thought it was Monday morning, but it's only Saturday. I can stay in bed, right? I mean, those are all types of confusion that we kind of awaken to.
Sure.
And so maybe, I mean, that whole point, I would hate to think that my father's still dealing with Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
But if he is, maybe that's why he hasn't really made himself known, because maybe he's still living in that confusion.
Or maybe he's coming out of it now.
Sure.
And maybe that's why the longer it is for them, maybe, some people right away, they start to feel their others' presence and sometimes it takes a while to feel that presence, and so maybe that's the case. Maybe it was good that we waited a while, because we did get some intelligent answers when we did your dad's. Would it happen, if we tried it a week after he passed, would it have been the same? Maybe not. It's really interesting. Now, your mom did not pass from that. Your mom came to us very clearly. But your dad did. And of course it wasn't years upon years for him. So it may have just been that year that his consciousness needed to start coming out of the fog. Now, if we tried that in a few more months, would we get even more of a response?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about this, because it's not the answer I expected from her.
Me either, because you always get the impression that when you die, all of a sudden, all your ailments are gone.
Right.
You're back to being your, tip-top shape. So I'm sitting here thinking, when I die, I'm going to have a bad knee for a while, because that will frickin' suck.
But again, she said, it depends.
Right.
So who knows? I mean, really, we all want to think that we're suddenly enlightened and we're 100% again, but maybe that's really not the way it is. As in, with life, nothing ever goes 100% the way we expected either. So maybe it is in certain cases that it carries over. Maybe that confusion does. Maybe in the case of physical ailments, it's not. Because don't forget, the thought is that it's our consciousness, not our physical bodies are there on the other side, but our consciousness. So we may not have to deal with the physical problems, but we may still have to deal with the mental and emotional problems that carry over until we can pull ourselves away from and work through that, you know, and that may even tie in with the life review that a lot of people believe happens. You know, I can't say one way or the other. I honestly, even years and years and years after investigating, I don't have anywhere near to all the answers. I can just tell you what I experienced. But I just thought that was so interesting. So are there confused spirits, intelligent spirits? I've experienced them. I experienced them a couple weekends ago during the investigation. I've experienced them in many investigations where they're just confused, some more than others. So I don't know. It's really an interesting thought. I think that maybe towards the end of this season, maybe we should try your dad again and see if we get even more response.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to have us try and reach out to one of your family members or a loved one, let us know and we'll try and do that.
Sure. I think it's an amazing experiment to try this, and it can be very personal, but it's just also just very thought-provoking. And speaking of thought-provoking, before we go this week, and of course, we'll review these answers and we'll do the same thing we did with your family. We'll see if we get any answers, and we'll also see if anybody else does. I may actually take this audio and enhance it for everybody and put it in our group, our Stay Weirdos group.
I love that idea.
Separate, so that you can really pump it up and listen to it fully. But just speaking of thought-provoking and along the Michelle Belanger lines, one thing in a class that Dave and I were watching last night about thought forms and how we can sort of you can actually create these energies just by focusing intently, and I'm really dumbing it down, but you can create energies. There's experiments. They did an experiment in Canada on Kindred Spirits several seasons ago. They were at like a winery estate, and they created a ghost. And the idea is that several people at once, or even one person, focusing enough on something can create it. And so somebody asked her the question. It was a 2-hour class, but somebody asked her the question of, can cryptids be thought forms? And I thought, isn't that interesting?
I would think yes.
Yes. And I thought so too. I mean, even something like a Sasquatch, like Bigfoot, could he possibly actually be a thought form? And by thought form, I mean not just something imaginary, something that we imagine but bring to life.
Right.
So that it's actually real. She gave an example of a man who, John Keel, who is very well known for the Mothman prophecies, did a study. There is a home in New York City. Years and years and years ago, there was a radio show called The Shadow. I know you've heard of it.
The Shadow knows.
Exactly. So the man who created The Shadow, okay, was very, very, very involved in it. He was very focused on it, on creating it and making it the best that it could absolutely be. And as a result, so many people just to even today know who The Shadow is, and they followed it, and it was a hugely, immensely popular radio show back in the day. And there's a home in New York City where people would continuously see a shadow, and they could describe it to a T. It had a long black trench, a fedora type hat. Its face was partially covered, almost like a bandit covering. You know, it was, and it moved with a purpose, not menacing, but it moved with a purpose, and they would see it moving, and tons of people would see this thing. And at first they thought it was a haunting, which in and of itself, a thought form can be a haunting, but they thought it was a haunting or residual haunting. But as it turns out, John Keel looked into it, and the man who created The Shadow actually stayed in that home for quite a while as he was developing it. And so they feel there is the thought that because he was so focused on this and lived and breathed and ate and drank this shadow character, that his mind actually created it. And that's what people would see within the home. It sort of took on a life of its own. And if you think about that, why couldn't a cryptid actually take on a life of its own? It's not imaginary, it's real, but we've created it. All of us have created it with our focus on it and our attention to it and our believing that it's real or could be real. We've created, and I thought that was a fascinating story. She also said that dolls in and of themselves, she doesn't feel as if they are truly spirits taking over the vessel. She feels that dolls, for the most part, are thought forms that we've created. So essentially, as a child, if you have a doll or had a doll that you loved and gave a name to, and it became your best friend, then you've created that thought form. That doll is now part of you. Not that it happens all the time, obviously. It's not a common occurrence, but these things can happen. Same with imaginary friends. Are imaginary friends really spirits, or are they thought forms that these kids, whether through trauma or just being a child, have given life to and made real? So just very thought-provoking, and just different things that, it made me think of the Beast of Bray Road. Perfect example of a cryptid that there really is absolutely no evidence of, but everybody says they've seen it.
Yeah. And
is it real? As far as, did it always exist? Or, there aren't reports of it through all history. Or is it something that we've all sort of created in our minds over the years and has become actually real? So just some thought-provoking questions, things that I never thought of before. And I sat there, even Dave looked at me and said, that could be the case with some of this. I said, I know, it's wild. So it's a very thin line between the thought form idea, residual hauntings. They kind of walk the line sometimes. Not that all of them are thought forms, because it's not that common of occurrence, but it can be created. So very interesting stuff.
That could be a topic that we could bring up later this season and talk about, because I know that paranormal psychologist Lloyd Auerbach also believes that our minds can create all this stuff. So,
Interesting.
Well, all right then. I guess we've got episode number 2 under our belt for season 12. Please listen back to the audio. We'll somehow get the enhanced audio to you so you can listen to that. And then maybe on the next podcast, we'll actually talk about what we heard.
Yes, definitely. Now, we may take the next week off, but there may be some bonus content in there for you, but we will be back the week after with that.
What we could do is we could take that enhanced audio and make that a podcast where we just play the audio for the entire podcast.
Most definitely.
There's our answer.
We'll see what you guys think.
All right, sounds good. So until the next time that we get together, bye.
Bye.